and Sheila Leach, the Vice President of Operations with the HBRA. And today we have another special guest with us. This is Tim Hollister from Shipman Goodwin. Shipman Goodwin has been a member with the HBRA for quite some time, but plays a very, very active role in keeping things going for the residential construction industry, and very much behind the scenes and very much very quiet about it, but has a huge impact on what affects all of our members.
Thank you.
Tim, thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to start off and ask you, well, how's business going? How are you conducting business? And what has the shift been in your business recently?
Well, thank you. First, thank you for the opportunity to talk to all the members, and thanks for all the work that you all have done keeping everybody in business, not the least of which is getting residential construction identified as an essential business. I mean, obviously the impact of that is huge today and for a long time to come. I've been a lawyer for 38 years, and I've worked through 3 downturns. The late 80s, post 9/11, and 2008 to 2010. And one of the mantras for a firm like ours is, if the economy changes direction, you change what you're doing, but you keep working on other things. I think this experience has just come so quickly, and it's such a scope. It's without precedent, and like everybody else, we're writing a new rule book and a new playbook. One of the main things is we've gone from 40 people working remotely to all 335 of us in the space of about 10 days. I say to my friends that this is proof that old dogs can learn new tricks, which either means that I am or am not an old dog, because I've learned a lot of new tricks. But the main thing that we have been doing, this is just in the last 12, 15 days, is executive orders and federal legislation and state legislation and state programs and all the stuff that you're reading about. It's really our job as lawyers, and this is not stuff we're charging for. This is our obligation to the community, is to read it, understand it, put it in plain English, get the advice out there to your members and many other clients that we deal with about how to take advantage of what the government has put out there in response to the pandemic. But equally important, and this is maybe the unseen side of what we do, is avoiding the traps and the pitfalls. I'll give you one example of a trap. If you're a landlord and you're thinking about a rent abatement or rent forgiveness or rent extension, you better look and make sure that's okay with your lender, because most of your lending documents are going to have a lender consent clause. So which sounds like a little thing, but you could end up trying to change the rent roll for your commercial or residential building and end up in the crosshairs of your lender. So I mean, those are the things that we're trying to identify. I'll just give you one other very interesting example. My firm represents 100 of the public school districts, which have all, of course, moved to online classes. So one of the interesting questions is, can you do that without the consent of the union, the teachers union? That's been a fascinating issue that is just going on. But anyway, so all of this stuff that we're doing, we've wrapped up into our online COVID-19 resource center, which every business in America that wants to keep their name out there is doing. But I think we've done it, as fast and as well as certainly any other regional law firm. And you just can look on the resource center and see the scope of the explanations that we've had to give. It's real estate, but it's also bankruptcy, healthcare, tax, school law, labor and employment, everything. It's just breathtaking, the things that we've been tasked with understanding and explaining. So, so let me, at your invitation, let me move on to the things that are, I think, of most interest to the building community. And first, I reached out to some of my construction and real estate colleagues. I said, what are you telling your clients? And their first and most important advice is review your contracts. We did an alert right out of the box about force majeure clauses, which is a pandemic is an act of God, which could be a reason to excuse performance in a contract. So you need to review all your contracts and anticipate, whichever side of the deal or the contract you're on, what can you do? What can the other party or parties to the contract do? Know what their rights are, what your remedies are. And obviously in this environment, we're always advising our clients, work with the other side. Don't think that, litigation or trying to, get out of a bad situation by force majeure is the easy or right way to do things. But there are going to be situations where other people are going to push back inappropriately, and you need to be able to deal with that. Closer to home on the land use side, we have Governor Lamont's Order 7B, which came out the early one, the second one actually, which allows public agencies, not just land use agencies, school boards, budget committees, everything, to meet electronically as without the public in attendance, without violating the Freedom of Information Act. And I'll just, and it can be by phone or video. And there's 5 conditions, which I'll just read real quickly. Number 1 is the public has to be able to view or listen in real time to the meeting. That after the meeting is done, it has to be recorded, or a recording has to be posted on the town's website. The agenda obviously needs to be available online. The materials, if for a builder, a site plan, or, a report has to be available on the town's website at least 24 hours before the so-called electronic or virtual meeting. And then, and this is a real burden on whoever's conducting the meeting, if there's someone speaks, they have to clearly identify their name and who they are, maybe not just address, but, I represent or I work with. So if you do that, you can conduct an online virtual meeting. I think the message, and we put this right up front in the client alert that we did, people need to understand, just because town hall is closed does not mean the towns are relieved of their responsibilities. My impression, probably yours also, is that most of the municipal workers and employees are keeping their jobs. They're working remotely. I'm sure you're seeing this in the area of buildings and building inspections and building permits. But towns have not shut down. They've just moved online and working remotely like the rest of us. There's tremendous pressure on the town staff to manage this new technology. Some are doing it better than others. There's obviously, we're right in the middle of what I would call the initial shakedown cruise. But the bottom line is, if any of your members feel like their members or their rights or contracts or wherever are being compromised by how an online meeting is conducted, send an email right away to the person who's in charge, and as a backup, we can help. So the other big order is 7I, and I participated in a group that helped the governor's office write this, and talk about going from 0 to 80 in about 5 seconds. But it covers planning, zoning, wetlands, coastal, shores, clean water, and so it's just mind-boggling in how broad the coverage is. But there's 3 basic pieces to it. Number 1, all deadlines are now extendable, not automatically extended, but extendable by 90 days. Number 2 is all notices, newspaper publications, sign posting, town clerk filing can now be done electronically on the town's website or by email. And then when the town halls reopen, anything that could have been or should have been done on paper or was done electronically, you need to put a hard copy on file at the appropriate town office, which will be a wave of work after the town halls start to reopen. But again, tremendous pressure on the town staffs to manage this. But again, the message is the towns have not shut down. They have their responsibilities, including their deadlines. So we need to watch the deadlines. And, again, if any of the members need help in sort of navigating the process, or if they think that their rights are being compromised, we can help with that. But, my impression is the towns will be able to handle sort of the routine business, where just the members discussing something. it's going to be the contested public hearings where you have an applicant and opposition. That's going to be the tough situation, and we don't really know how that's going to unfold. It may well depend on how adept the town staff and the chair of the meeting is at handling the technology. But that's what's in front of us. So that's kind of a summary of where my firm is. I'm enormously proud of my land use team, and we haven't had a day off, and we're just doing what we need to do. So,
yeah. Have you heard of any towns? Sorry.
So go ahead.
Have you heard of any towns conducting those meetings and any success with those meetings as of yet?
Oh yeah, no, and it's the list grows daily. Hartford, where the chair of the zoning commission is Professor Sarah Bronin, the mayor's wife and a UConn law professor. She had the day after the order came out, she did an online meeting, and but she's a whiz at that kind of stuff. But I will say I haven't heard of any town that has canceled because they didn't feel like they could conduct a meeting. I mean, Zoom and WebEx seem to be the platforms of choice. And as I said, I think the towns are starting with sort of routine business, and then maybe they'll work their way onto more complex topics. But what I haven't seen is a full-blown contested hearing conducted electronically. That may be coming up, but not yet.
Yeah, that will be interesting for sure. But I did want to thank you and your firms for your leadership on working on the governor's executive order 7I, because you guys were working tirelessly. You were contacting myself and Jim Parrish for feedback from our membership on what was important to include in that. And again, you guys were instrumental in making sure that the towns are staying open and being able to conduct business as you just outlined. It's been interesting. We've all kind of adapted to this new reality of working from home and working remotely. And we've heard some good feedback from our members about the towns that are trying to be creative, doing inspections, whether it's doing them remotely through FaceTime and some other technologies, whether it's coming in and saying, okay, we'll do an inspection inside if there's nobody in the house and there's nobody present or no workers in there, and then they come back. So I think everybody's in this together, and they're trying to be creative and trying to find ways to keep things moving, which has been great. So, Tim, you guys also had this week. You just had an analysis on the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act that was out there, and I know your firm took a leadership role on that and disseminating information and. Want to see if you could touch base a little bit on that, and also just to, again, you touched on it in the beginning of, your firm has resources on their COVID-19 page, and I think it's important to go to those trusted resources like Shipman Goodwin or other people that you trust, because there's so much information out there, and you can be overwhelmed by trying to go down these rabbit holes of where you're getting information and social media and things. But I think it's important to go to those trusted resources. Whether it's, again, your firm, whether it's the associations that you're involved in, but try to find those trusted resources that are out there. NHB has a lot of resources on their website as well, and we have a lot of those on our site as well. So I just wanted to make sure that people are going through those. But if you could touch base on that, the Paid Sick Leave Act a little bit, would be great.
Yeah, well, that's the paid sick leave is out of my area of expertise, but my colleagues. Dan Schwartz and Gabe Duran did a webinar yesterday that I believe covered that. The whole unemployment and benefits and furloughs and layoffs and unemployment compensation, what you can and can't do, is obviously front and center because it's April 2nd and people have bills to pay this week. So there are explanations of the act that you asked about on the COVID-19 Resource Center. I can't stress enough, we have we're doing our client work, which we always do, but we're doing that in our spare time. Front and center is watching all the government websites for the final versions of these new legislations, and especially at the federal level, like the CARES Act. There was the act, which was, hundreds of pages long. And then there was the guidance from the Treasury Department that came out a few days later. And then there's been Department of Labor guidance on, just some of the fine points, like if you're applying for a Connecticut Small Business Administration loan, you have to identify who are your affiliate businesses. You can't, if you have parents or subsidiaries, you have to, what is the entity that's applying for the loan because that determines what the financial statements are that are necessary. So, this is really a rolling wave, which is why you'll see on the COVID-19 Resource Center, it is updated several times daily. Before I logged in with you this morning, there's an alert already posted this morning about something that came out yesterday. So it just shows that the information is flowing. But on the labor and employment stuff, I'll defer to my colleague. But it all is on the Resource Center, and it's in almost real time and getting up there. So
that's great. Thank you. And actually, aside from COVID-19 and what's going on in our current state, I wanted to also just give a little shout out to you for the work that you did with NHB, and actually it started with Eric Santini Sr. And worked its way all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And it was just last year, I believe, that you guys received a favorable ruling as it dealt with land takings and land use.
Yeah, and I want to thank Joanne Carroll for the nice recognition in Connecticut Builder and Eric Santini also that came out yesterday. It's funny, in a backhand way, the case that we handled in the U.S. Supreme Court, which involves takings and rights under the Fifth Amendment, is sort of sneaking in the back door of the response to the pandemic in this way. Most real estate agreements, leases, contracts, whatever, have a condemnation clause, really a takings clause. And one of the ways that I talk about rights and remedies before in a business situation, which includes real estate, there can be relief from either a contractual commitment or, a real estate obligation on the theory that what the governor has done or the president has done in shutting down businesses is essentially a taking of real property. Now that gets really complicated, and I won't get into the legal weeds, but that's, I talked before about traps and pitfalls and opportunities. That's one of the little things that's embedded in there that, people would not normally think about. But the Nick case opens up that remedy in a much simpler way than would have been the case, before 2019. So it's all one big seamless web.
It is all related, but no, we wanted to thank you for that as well. You've as I said in the beginning, you do an unbelievable amount of work for the association and our members very quietly and under the radar, and wanted to thank you very much for that. So
yeah, well, thank you. It's a great partnership we have with the HBRA and with NAHB. I'm now 20 years on the legal action committee there, and that's it's been great for me because I think that's my resource. I learned about waves before they hit the shore, so to speak.
Right.
And plus the camaraderie of the organization. And you both know as well as I do. We've seen NAHB swoon in its membership and then just come back unbelievably strong as we saw at the International Builders Show in January. So NAHB and HBRA have been a great source to me and my team. We're very grateful for that.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate everything that you do for us, and wanted to just again thank you very much for your time today. We will post when we post this. We'll post link to your COVID-19 resource page on your website as well, so members can access that if they'd like to.
Okay, and I one more thing. I said to you before we started recording, this background is not my office. This is my dining room.
Well, it's very nice. We're all, as you said, I think, commandeering our own little pieces of our houses and home offices and kitchens and things, and learning to adapt as we find this new normal here. So
very good.
Tim, thank you very much for your time. We look forward to seeing you soon and seeing you out there where we can actually say hello and enjoy each other's company.
Yes, sir. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.